The footprints came from the treeline. They pressed deep into the fresh snow, one after another, leading across the open field toward a farmhouse on the edge of the Bavarian countryside. A trail left behind by someone who had walked with purpose, with patience in the dead of winter. But here is what made those footprints different from any other set of tracks in the snow that season. There were no footprints leading away. Whoever had walked to that farmhouse had not walked back. In the weeks that followed, keys went missing from inside the locked house. A newspaper appeared on the kitchen table that no one in the family had purchased. And at night, when the house fell quiet, one of them began hearing footsteps above the ceiling. Not the creak of old wood, not the sound of pipes settling in the cold. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, and entirely human. The farmer believed someone was living in his attic. He told people in the village about it. Some of them thought he was imagining things. Some of them told him to call someone. He never did. A few days later, 6 people were dead. And then, in one of the most disturbing twists in the history of unsolved crime, someone continued living on that farm after the murders. 4 days, possibly longer, while the bodies lay hidden inside, smoke rose from the chimney, the animals were fed, and the lights came on at night. This is the story of Hinterkaifeck. And more than 100 years later, no one has ever been charged. The family. The farm sat alone on a flat stretch of Bavarian farmland in Germany, surrounded by fields that rolled out in every direction before disappearing into distant woodland. The nearest village was far enough away that if something went wrong at the Gruber farm, no one in town would see it, hear it, or know about it until someone decided to check. And in the winter of 1922, nobody checked for a very long time. The family was headed by Andreas Gruber, a 63-year-old farmer who had worked that land his entire life. His wife, Kazilia, was 72. Their daughter, Victoria Gabriel, was 35, and lived at the farm with her 2 young children, 7-year-old Kazilia and 2-year-old Joseph. On the day everything changed, the household had also just welcomed a new maid. Her name was Maria Baumgartner, and March 31, 1922, was her very first day on the job. The events, the warning signs. It started with the footprints. At some point in the weeks leading up to the murders, Andreas discovered tracks in the snow near his property. They came from the direction of the forest and led directly toward the farmhouse. He followed them carefully, scanning the trail, waiting for them to loop back. They never did. The tracks ended near the farm and disappeared entirely. No return path. No explanation. He reported this to neighbors and at least one other person in the local area. Some dismissed it. Some listened but didn't act. Then the house keys vanished. A set of keys belonging to the property went missing from inside the locked farmhouse. There was no sign of a break-in. Nothing else was taken. Just the keys, gone, as though someone had simply picked them up and walked away with them. Shortly afterward, a newspaper appeared on the kitchen table. It was a publication that the Gruber family did not subscribe to. None of them recognized it. It had simply arrived, somehow from somewhere, and been left in a place where someone in the household would eventually find it. And then came the sounds. Andreas began hearing footsteps above the ceiling at night. He described them to at least one person outside the family. Not the ordinary settling sounds of an old farmhouse, but footsteps, consistent enough and heavy enough that he became convinced someone was moving around in the space above the living quarters. The attic. He was not a man given to panic. He knew that farm, every corner of it, every shadow. And he was telling people plainly that something was wrong. The footprints. The missing keys. The newspaper nobody ordered. The sounds above his head at night. Nobody came. March 31, 1922. On the last day of March 1922, sometime in the late afternoon or early evening, someone arrived at the Hinterkaifeck farm with a weapon. Historical accounts identify the weapon as a mattock, a heavy agricultural tool with a flat blade on one side and a pointed end on the other. It was the kind of tool found on almost any farm in Bavaria at the time. Investigators believe the victims were lured into the barn one by one. Andreas Gruber was likely the first, then his wife Kazilia, then Victoria, then young Kazilia, 7 years old, who may have followed after realizing the others had not returned. All four were killed inside the barn. Afterward, the killer re-entered the farmhouse. Maria Baumgartner, who had arrived that same day to begin her work as the family's new maid, was killed in her room. 2-year-old Joseph was killed in his crib. Then something extraordinary happened. Nothing. No alarm was raised. No one came running. The farm sat in silence on the edge of the Bavarian countryside, and the world simply continued around it, unaware. The discovery. The bodies were not found on April 1st. Not on the 2nd. Not for nearly a week. It was neighbors and local townspeople who eventually grew concerned when the family failed to appear in the village and the children did not show up at school. On April 4, 1922, a group of locals made the journey out to the Hinterkaifeck farm to investigate. What they found defied easy explanation. The bodies of 4 family members were discovered inside the barn, partially covered with hay. The maid and the infant were found inside the house. All 6 had been killed with what investigators determined was a single blunt-edged weapon, consistent with a mattock. The farm showed no signs of forced entry. No windows broken. No doors kicked in. Whoever had been there had either been let in, or had already been inside. The victims appeared to have been led into the barn individually. The evidence suggested they were not all there together. Someone had waited. The unexplained detail. In most murder cases, the question investigators ask is simple. Who did this and where did they go afterward? At Hinterkaifeck, the second part of that question became deeply, disturbingly complicated. Because the evidence strongly suggests that whoever killed the Gruber family did not leave. In the days between the murders and the discovery of the bodies, neighbors passing by reported seeing smoke rising from the chimney. The livestock had been fed. Food appeared to have been prepared in the kitchen. From the outside, the farm looked entirely normal. Occupied. Functioning. Alive. Someone had stayed behind. Investigators found evidence suggesting that meals had been eaten inside the farmhouse after the murders. The animals had been given fresh feed in the days following March 31st. These were not tasks that could have been completed accidentally or automatically. They required someone physically present on the property, moving through the barns, working in the kitchen, sleeping somewhere on the grounds, all while the bodies of 6 people were hidden nearby. Investigators believed the killer remained at the property for at least 2 days and possibly longer. They considered it one of the most disturbing elements of the entire case. And when investigators searched the attic of the Hinterkaifeck farmhouse, what they found gave weight to a theory that has never been fully resolved. There was evidence consistent with someone having used that space, signs that, at minimum, raised the possibility that a person had been sheltering there, hidden above the family's heads, for some period before the murders. Andreas had heard sounds from that direction. He had reported it. Whether those sounds and the evidence found above were connected to the killer remains, to this day, unproven. But the pattern is difficult to look past. The footprints with no return trail. The keys taken from inside a locked house. The newspaper that appeared from nowhere. The footsteps in the ceiling at night. And then the murders, followed by days of someone quietly maintaining the farm as though nothing had happened. This was not a spontaneous act. The weeks before March 31st point toward someone who had been watching the family, learning their routines, studying the property, waiting. For what reason and for what final trigger, nobody knows. The investigation. More than 100 detectives and investigators were eventually assigned to the Hinterkaifeck case. They interviewed more than 100 suspects. No arrest was ever made. Early suspicion fell on Lorenz Schlittenbauer, a neighbor who had previously had a relationship with Victoria Gabriel. He had been among the group who discovered the bodies and had led the others directly to the barn without searching elsewhere first. He was questioned multiple times and always denied involvement. He was never charged. After reviewing all the evidence, investigators believed the killer knew the farm very well, the family's daily routines, the layout of the property. They did not believe it was a random stranger. They believed it was someone the Grubers knew, or someone who had secretly watched them for a long time. The case is still officially unsolved. 6 people were killed on the night of March 31, 1922, on an isolated farm in the Bavarian countryside. The person who killed them has never been identified. No one has ever been charged, tried, or convicted. But perhaps the question that stays with you is not who did it. Perhaps the question is something simpler and far more unsettling. Andreas Gruber knew something was wrong. He said so plainly to people who could have helped. He heard the footsteps. He found the newspaper. He noticed the missing keys. He was not paranoid. He was not imagining it. He was right. So tonight, when your house falls quiet, and the sounds that shouldn't be there start to settle in, ask yourself honestly, how long would you wait before you decided to look? If you want to uncover the unsolved mysteries and chilling crime story, subscribe to my channel and never miss a shocking case.